There is a photograph from February 24, 1981, that never loses its power. Diana's left hand held up toward the cameras in front of Buckingham Palace. On her finger, a 12-carat blue saline sapphire, surrounded by 14 diamonds, set in white gold. But what most people who saw that photograph at the time did not know is that Britain's oldest institution had looked at that ring and considered it a mistake. Not a mistake of taste, a mistake of protocol. Because Diana had not chosen a ring designed exclusively for her, she had opened a catalogue from Garrett Jewellery, the Crown Jewellers, and had pointed to something that already existed, something with a reference number, something that anyone with £47,000 could buy. It was the first time in modern history that a royal bride chose a ring that had not been created specifically for her finger. The palace read it as a lack of understanding of protocol. Diana experienced it differently. It was the first decision she had been able to make completely on her own since the engagement was announced weeks before. What happened to that ring from that day until the moment Diana chose to replace it is a story that spans 15 years of marriage, lies sustained by an entire institution, a confrontation on the staircase of a house in Richmond, and a night in London that stopped time for 30 seconds. This is that story. In the summer of 1981, with the wedding of the century less than 2 weeks away, Diana had been living at Buckingham Palace for 5 months. 5 months of lessons on how to wave correctly from the elbow, not the wrist. On what colours to wear to be visible in the crowd. On how to navigate the 170 annual engagements that awaited her. On how to become the character the institution needed her to be. And 5 months completely alone. Charles was on an official tour through the United States, Australia, and New Zealand. Diana remained at the palace surrounded by courtiers who were not her friends, learning rules for a life that had not yet begun. One day she walked into the office she shared with Michael Colborne, one of Charles's personal assistants. Among the wedding gifts that were piling up, she saw a small package, wrapped with care. Colborne warned her not to touch it. It was not for her. Diana opened it anyway. Inside was a gold bracelet, a lapis lazuli pendant with 2 engraved letters that intertwined. F and G, Fred and Gladys, the secret nicknames that Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles used with each other, taken from a private joke on the radio program The Goon Show, which Charles adored. Diana already knew them. Close friends had told her weeks before what they meant. She confronted Charles when he returned. He calmly replied that it was a farewell gift for Camilla, a gentlemanly gesture before getting married, a way to close that chapter of his life. Biographer Penny Junor, a close friend of Charles and Camilla, confirmed that the prince had a habit of giving jewelry gifts to women with whom he had had a relationship before a major change, as a gesture of gratitude. Diana did not believe a word. On Monday, July 28, 1981, the day before the wedding, while Diana was having lunch with her sisters, Charles met with Camilla in person to give her the bracelet. Diana knew it, and during that lunch, she told her sisters that she did not want to get married, that she wanted to cancel everything. Her sister Sarah replied with the words that Diana would repeat for the rest of her life. Diana's face was already on the souvenir mugs and towels filling the shops all over England. It was too late to stop the machinery. The next day, July 29, 1981, she walked down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral with a train of 7.5 meters of taffeta. 750 million people watched it on television. The Archbishop of Canterbury declared that it was the stuff of which fairy tales are made. And Diana, as she walked toward the altar, looked for a face among the pews. She found it. Her own words, recorded years later on the secret tapes she gave to journalist Andrew Morton. Walking down the aisle I saw Camilla, pale grey, pillbox hat with a veil. I saw everything. Camilla had been invited to the ceremony, and Diana walked straight ahead, toward a marriage of which she already knew the truth, with the image of that woman etched in her memory. The sapphire ring was on her finger. The honeymoon on the royal yacht. Britannia should have been the start of something. Instead, it confirmed everything Diana already knew. One day, while they were reviewing their diaries together, Charles opened his diary and 2 photographs of Camilla fell to the floor. Diana saw them, and she saw something else. On the sleeves of Charles's suit, cufflinks gleamed that she had not given him. 2 intertwined letters C, a gift from Camilla. Worn on the honeymoon, Diana confronted him. Charles's response, as she recalled it later on the tapes for Morton, yes, and what is wrong with that? They are a gift from a friend. Think about Diana's situation at that moment. She was 20 years old. She was on a yacht in the Mediterranean, surrounded by royal staff, with no one to call. Her mother had abandoned the family when Diana was 6 years old. The only family she knew was the one she had just entered, and that family had its own loyalties that did not include the woman crying alone in her cabin. The sapphire ring was still on her finger, and so it would remain for 15 more years. What came during the next decade and a half is one of the darkest chapters of this story. Not because the betrayal was new, but because the structure that was built around Diana to support her was actually the structure crushing her. According to Jonathan Dimbleby, Charles's authorized biographer, the Prince and Camilla resumed their romantic relationship around 1986. But what is documented with the words of Diana herself is that she suspected it much earlier, and that absolutely everyone around her told her she was imagining it. Andrew Morton described it in precise terms as a Kafkaesque world, in which Diana suspected that Charles and Camilla basically lived together, and everyone responded to her that it was nonsense, not to be so absurd, that she was confused. The Queen Mother participated in that silence. The words documented by Morton in his biography say that Diana's suspicions were, as the Queen Mother told her inner circle, the fantasies of a silly girl. According to the Daily Express, she was even more direct. Diana is a silly girl who doesn't understand that men have affairs. They told her that while the entire structure of the court knew, there was a moment in June 1990 that crystallizes the magnitude of the cover-up operation. Charles broke his arm in a polo match and was taken to Cirencester Hospital. Camilla had been the first person to visit him. When it became known that Diana was coming from London, Charles's personal team coordinated Camilla's departure from the room before his wife arrived. It was not an accident, it was an operation. Diana continued to be called the silly girl. February 1989, the house of Lady Annabel Goldsmith in Richmond. A birthday party for Camilla's sister. No one expected Diana to show up. She knew it, and she went anyway. Her own words to Morton, "A voice inside me told me to go for it. So I mentally prepared myself in a ghastly way. When she arrived, instead of greeting Camilla with the usual kiss on the cheek, she extended her hand. Camilla took it. After dinner, Diana noticed that neither Charles nor Camilla was in the room. They had both disappeared. Close guests tried to stop her when she started going down the stairs. Diana replied with irrefutable logic. She just wanted to find her husband. She had been upstairs for an hour and a half. She had every right. She went down. She found them in a room on the lower floor, with a third guest, chatting quietly. When the other man said they should all go up and they stood up, Diana spoke. "Camilla, I would like to have a word with you, if possible." Camilla lowered her head and became visibly uncomfortable. They sat down. Diana was terrified, she admitted it, but she spoke. "I know exactly what is going on. I want you to know that." Camilla replied that she did not know what she was talking about. Diana insisted, "I know what is going on between you and Charles." What Camilla said next was a phrase that Diana could never erase from her memory. She told her that she had everything any woman could ever want. Men falling in love with her, 2 beautiful children, a privileged life. What more could she want? Diana gave a single answer, 5 words. "I want my husband." Someone ran down the stairs upon hearing voices. Diana, before getting up, told Camilla one last thing. "I'm sorry I'm in the way. It must be hell for both of you, but don't treat me like an idiot." Diana's protection officer, Ken Warf, was present that night and related it later in a documentary. He described the car ride back as tense but different. Diana was calmer. She had lifted a huge burden off herself. It was as if she had finally said out loud what she had carried inside for years. Charles was right next to Diana in the car. She was crying like she had never cried before, and the sapphire ring was still on her left hand. June 29, 1994. The night Diana decided she would not be the victim. That evening, the documentary about Charles, produced by Jonathan Dimbleby, was broadcast across the United Kingdom. 2.5 hours of interview. And at some point, Dimbleby asked him the inevitable question about whether he had been faithful in his marriage to Diana. Charles paused, and he responded, "Until it became irretrievably broken, us both having tried." The first public admission of adultery by the heir to the throne in the modern history of the British monarchy. 23 million people listened to it live. That same night, Diana stepped out of a car in front of the Serpentine Gallery in Kensington. She wore a black silk dress off the shoulder with a plunging neckline, designed by couturier Christina Stambolian. She had kept that dress in her wardrobe for 3 years without daring to put it on. Paul Burrell, her butler and confidant, recounted what happened that afternoon. Diana was hesitating. She couldn't face the world, she said. And then, almost as an afterthought, "Besides, I have nothing to wear." Burrell showed her the Stambolian dress. Diana looked at it. "Don't you think it's too much?" And then she made the decision. Burrell zipped her up. She looked at herself in the mirror and went out. The director of the Serpentine Gallery later said that when Diana stepped out of the car, it was impossible not to gasp. Photographer Tim Graham, who captured the images that would define the night, confirmed that the entire moment from when the car door opened until Diana entered the building lasted 30 seconds. 30 seconds that became permanent. But there is something in the photographs from that night that almost no one mentions when they talk about the black dress. Look at her left hand. Diana wore the sapphire ring, the same engagement ring, the same one that had been on her finger during every promise and every betrayal of the last 13 years. And alongside the ring, the pearl and sapphire choker she had been given as a wedding present. She wore the symbols of that marriage the night her husband publicly admitted to destroying it. Not because she had forgotten to take them off, but because she wanted the world to see them. She wanted everyone to understand exactly what that ring meant now. Designer Christina Stambolian articulated it better than anyone. In Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake Ballet, there are two female characters: Odette, the white swan, the victim, the pure one, the deceived one, and Odile, the black swan, the one who knows exactly what she is doing, the one who chooses her moment and uses it. Stambolian said that Diana that night clearly chose to be the black swan, not the victim, but the woman who knows. She wore the ring of her broken marriage to do it. November 20th, 1995. The BBC Panorama interview with Martin Bashir, filmed in secret at Kensington Palace without the royal family knowing. 23 million viewers live. Diana, looking directly into the camera with a cutting calm, uttered the phrase that would define an era. There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. In that same interview, she spoke about her bulimia, her depression, the years when she had asked for help, and the institution had responded by giving her a label. Perhaps I was the first person in this family who ever had a depression or who ever cried openly, and obviously that was daunting. She had been told she had a mental imbalance. She had been told she was unstable. They said that while they knew she was right from the beginning, the interview infuriated the institution, the Queen, Charles, and also, it must be said, Diana's son. William was 13 years old, and according to royal biographer Katie Nicholl, it was one of the few times Diana and her eldest son argued. He did not want those details to be made public. Diana believed she had no other choice. They had taken everything from her except her voice. A month later, the Queen wrote letters to both Charles and Diana urging them to finalize the divorce. It was not a suggestion. It was an order. The institution had seen enough. On August 28, 1996, the divorce was officially signed. What Diana lost was specific and calculated. The title of Her Royal Highness was stripped from her. That meant that under protocol, she would now have to curtsy before her ex-husband, before members of the royal family, and in the cruelest rule, before her own children. The settlement included £17 million in a lump sum, £350,000 annually for her office, joint custody of William and Harry, and her apartment at Kensington, and the sapphire ring. When Diana found out she would lose her title, she was devastated. At that moment, William, who was 14 years old and had lived through every chapter of that marriage from the inside, told her something that Paul Burrell witnessed and later shared publicly. "Don't worry, Mummy. I will give it back to you one day when I am king." Burrell said that Diana cried. William never had the chance to fulfill that promise. His mother died 368 days after the divorce. In June 1997, Diana auctioned 79 of her royal dresses at Christie's in New York. Dresses by Catherine Walker, Victor Edelstein, the Emanuels. She raised £3,250,000 for the Royal Marsden Hospital and the AIDS Crisis Trust. She summarized the auction in 3 words: "Sequins save lives." Vanity Fair wrote that it was a symbol of her changing life. She was dismantling the architecture of a life that had never been completely hers. At the pre-auction party in London, Diana appeared in a light blue dress by Catherine Walker. And what people noticed was not the dress, but her left hand. She was not wearing the sapphire. She wore a different ring, an emerald-cut aquamarine, flanked by diamonds set in 24-carat yellow gold. The stone had been given to her by Lucia Fletcher de Lima, wife of the former Brazilian ambassador to London and Diana's closest friend during her most difficult years. It was a stone from the same Brazilian mine from which the Queen's aquamarines are extracted. Diana had taken it to Asprey Jewelers in 1996, the same year as the divorce, and commissioned them to turn it into a ring. That new ring occupied the exact spot where the sapphire had been for 15 years. There was no statement, there was no announcement. Just a different ring on the same hand. It was not from a catalogue of royal jewelers. It did not represent any protocol or institution. It came from a true friendship. From someone who knew her and had given her something unconditionally. Diana had turned it into a piece of jewelry under her own instructions the year she was finally free to make her own decisions. The sapphire, the fairy tale, the lie sustained for 15 years, had disappeared from her finger. The aquamarine, her choice, her friend's gift, her new life, took its place. Diana was free. The photographs from that summer show a different woman, tanned, laughing, on yachts in the Mediterranean, present in a way that photographs from the marriage years rarely captured. She wore the aquamarine ring. She told a biographer after the divorce that she would never do anything to damage the monarchy, but that she no longer needed it. She had her work. She had walked through landmine fields in Angola and Bosnia. She had her children. She had a life she was building on her own terms for the first time in 16 years. She still wore the sapphire from time to time. She wore it to a gala in New York in December 1996, months after the divorce. She had not abandoned it permanently, but for the first time in her life, she chose when to wear it, and when not to. Not the palace, Not Charles, not protocol. Her August 31st, 1997, a tunnel in Paris. She was 36 years old. After Diana's death, her jewelry went to William and Harry. Harry inherited the sapphire ring. And years later, in a gesture he himself described in his memoirs, he offered it to his older brother. On November 16, 2010, William knelt in front of Catherine Middleton in Kenya and put that ring on her finger. The ring that the palace had considered a mistake of protocol. The ring that anyone with £47,000 could have bought in a jewelry shop. The ring that had been on Diana's finger during every promise and every silence of 15 years. William's words that day: obviously she's not going to be around to share all the fun and excitement of it all, so this is my way of keeping her close to it all. Catherine Middleton said it was very, very special. The aquamarine ring went to Harry. He chose it for Meghan Markle, who wore it on her right hand during their wedding reception in May 2018, on the same finger where Diana had worn it. Diana's choice, passing from mother to son, from son to wife. And the Fred and Gladys bracelet, the one Diana found in that package 2 weeks before the wedding, the supposed farewell gift that was never a farewell, Camilla continued to wear it. She was photographed wearing it on her wrist years later. Charles and Camilla married on April 9, 2005, 8 years after Diana's death. A civil ceremony at the Windsor Guildhall, not in a cathedral. It was not broadcast to 750 million people. There was no train of 7.5 meters of taffeta. There was no archbishop talking about fairy tales. A 19-year-old girl walked into a jewelry shop, opened a catalogue, and pointed at something she liked. The palace called it a mistake of protocol. It was the first decision that was completely hers. That ring was on her hand for 15 years, while an entire institution told her that what she knew was not true. While they called her unstable, paranoid, a silly girl who did not understand how the world works, while everyone around her silently coordinated to keep a lie alive. It was on her hand the night she found the photographs of Camilla in her husband's diary during their honeymoon. It was on her hand when she went down the stairs at Lady Annabel Goldsmith's house and said out loud for the first time what she had known for years. It was on her hand the night of the black dress when the world saw the black swan instead of the white swan. And it was on her hand the night Diana, finally, left it on the table. Not in a literal way, she left it in another way, by choosing a different ring, walking into a party in June 1997 with an aquamarine on her finger, and the certainty that the fairy tale was over, but that she was not done yet, that sequins could save lives, that her voice mattered, that she had the right to choose. The ring she chose from a catalogue lives today on the finger of the future Queen of England. The ring she chose for herself lives on the finger of the woman her son chose. Both began with the same person, a girl who pointed to something she liked in a jewelry shop and said that was the one she wanted. That was never a mistake of protocol. It was the first act of a woman who, over 16 years against everything an entire institution put against her, kept choosing, until she could choose freely. And that is the story that this ring carries engraved, even though no one has written it on its surface.